James Middleton's book was really interesting, I thought, because, like you, I think I've always been led to believe that the Middletons stayed at Anmer Hall, but he talks about staying at Sandringham. I don't think he specifies whether it was Christmas, but he talks about staying at Sandringham and the Queen making sure that he can take his dog with him.
Well, they went on shoots, didn't they?
Yes, yeah. And
there was always the Boxing Day shoot.
Going into the kitchen.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they've been, the Middletons have been very, very welcomed into the royal fold. They have a very close relationship, and they had a lovely relationship with the late Queen. And I think there's a good relationship between the King and the Middletons. And the Middletons have been so pivotal and important in this year that, I mean, are you saying perhaps don't discount the idea of them being there this year?
Yes, actually being in the big house.
I think it's a very real possibility, if there's space, because, of course, that's the problem with Sandringham. It sounds ridiculous, for a palatial home, there's not enough space. Well, why not? But there are outhouses, and Anmer is only a stone's throw from Sandringham anyway.
Speaking of relationships, the fact that Prince Andrew's going this year, now I know he went last year, but this year there's been a lot of reports about the royal housing saga and everything to do with Royal Lodge with him and King Charles. Do you think this says anything about the reported tension between the King and Prince Andrew, the fact that he will be going to Christmas this year, or will they just ignore it on the day?
Well, I think it's interesting, isn't it, the difference between their relationship and the relationship with Harry and Meghan, because there clearly is a huge rift there. Perhaps because Harry has taken it public, and Meghan, and I think, they felt that confidence had been betrayed, and the way Harry criticised Camilla in his book has left a nasty taste in the mouth. Whereas Andrew, there clearly has been some tension over the money at Royal Lodge. That the King saying, because you're no longer a working royal, we can't afford to give you the money that we used to give you to help with the upkeep of that place. But I always get the feeling with those brothers, it's so hard to know really what goes on behind the scenes in any family, let alone this family. But I always get the feeling that there is a difference between what the firm does as a business, if you like, for work, and how they are in private. And they are, I think, still very much a family. And, Fergie was very much out in the cold while Prince Philip was alive. He really couldn't bear being in the same room as her. She used to have to leave Balmoral when he arrived. But she's been brought back into the fold a little bit, first by the late Queen and then by the King and Queen Camilla. So the other thing is, I've been told that, people who are close to Andrew will say that they've never heard him criticise his brother ever.
Interesting. That's good. So I guess as well, it wouldn't be a family Christmas of any family if there weren't some underlying tension. So if anything, it's a little bit relatable.
Yes.
Just having some quiet little tensions at the table that everyone's going to ignore for the day. Moving on, we've got some quick fire questions to finish it up. You just give me a short answer, whatever you think of first. There's just a few of them, and whoever wants to go first can just jump in. Harry's polo show is all about his favourite hobby/sport. Which royal and their hobby would you like to see the focus of a Netflix series?
I'd like to see phorology, Princess Anne's love of phorology, which is lighthouses.
Oh.
She's got this hobby where she is trying to visit all 208 lighthouses in Scotland. I think she's more than halfway through.
So we'd have like a travel show
Yes.
hobby show. Okay, that's a great one. That's a great answer. I didn't
Around
know
the
that.
UK, yeah. I'd quite like to have a game of tennis with William and Kate and find out who is actually the better player, because there's always so much competition. And who is the best player? I suspect it's probably the Princess Wales. I think tennis.
And they talked about that in the Good, the Bad and the Rugby podcast. I think it was last year. And you could tell when it came up, they're so competitive.
They're really competitive. They really are. I'm sure there have been rackets that have been slammed in anger.
I want both those shows commissioned.
Yeah.
Which member of the royal family would you most like to join your family Christmas?
Camilla.
Oh, yeah, she'd be
I think
laugh.
she'd be great fun. You definitely have a good gin and tonic with her.
Yeah, I was going to say Camilla. I mean, years ago I would have said Harry, you know, because I love the fact that he wore his heart on his sleeve. There was lots of banter.
He'd just be giving you a hard time now.
He would very much so.
It would just be one long rant.
I don't think he'd come. There's a royal-sponsored camel trek, which is happening in Oman next month. That was announced this week. If allowed, which royal would you want to see on that trip on camelback?
Harry.
Again, I was going to say Harry. But, I mean, does raise an interesting point that we used to see them doing. I mean, Harry in particular did those treks to the Antarctic and the Arctic. But just more generally, when they were younger, they did lots of things. You know, they went canoeing, racing.
Do you remember them riding in Lesotho when they went off on horseback together, William and Harry?
Yes.
You know, the brothers who, according to Harry, were never so close.
Yeah. And as they've got older, they do less of that, which is a bit of a shame. So I think we're going to have to wait until about another 10, 15 years before George, Charlotte and Louis are at that age where they're doing lots of practical, active things.
Because Prince William announced it, and I understand there'd be a variety of reasons why he can't go on it, but I was disappointed. I would like to see him on that trip. We've been talking about authenticity this show. You've both been on the royal beat for so long. Which royal do you think holds their cards closest to their chest?
William, I'd say. He's a very private person, and I mean Kate is as well, but I think William.
I agree, and I think Kate has always held her cards very close to her chest. She's always been very private, and I have really admired her for the way that she's let that boundary down a little bit, because you know, you use the word wooden. People might say stiff or buttoned up, but I don't think that's what we want from our royals. I think we do want to see some of them. It's that hybrid, though, isn't it? It's what the late Queen said of never lifting the veil of majesty too much, that you let too much in on the magic. It's a hard combination, but I tell you, I think the King gets it right. I think he is that perfect hybrid of openness and transparency with enough mystique to keep the show on the road and keep us all interested.
As you said that, I remember that recent photo of him getting that massive cuddle from the rugby players. Rugby players. And it's moments like that. I think we see a lot more of that these days with the royals. Anyway, thank you both so much for your insights. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching. If you like the show, let us know in the comments. We love to read them. And remember to subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode.